I pledge allegiance to the flag
present? Yep. I call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. The board would like to welcome the audience and thank you for attending. Viewers may watch Board of Education meetings and Board of Committee meetings live at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. Please rise and join Ms. Wolfort's fourth grade class from Central Elementary in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's always fun to see what speed we're going to go at, but I do like the video still. So we have the review approval portion of the agenda. Do I have any motion to approve, any changes?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public comment, I believe there is a public comment. So the board has set aside this time for public comment, and individuals addressing the board shall have one opportunity to speak and shall be limited to 3 minutes. Individuals should not make personal attacks unrelated to actions affecting the school system. They strongly encourage common courtesy and constructive feedback. Detailed rules and procedures, including a complaint process, are outlined in Board Policy 2504. Thanks.
David Richardson.
Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Dave Richardson. I'm a teacher at West High School, which is my dream job. I absolutely love it there. I'm also a parent of 2 young children, so I have very deep interest in their future. Thank you, all of you, for everything you do. Board members volunteering your time for our school district. We really appreciate it coming out on this night. Tonight, thank you, Stacy, for everything you've done. You've been an amazing recording secretary. And congratulations to Tammy. People really miss her at West High, just because she is so good at her job, but she's a huge social force for we working together. From the first day I came in there years ago, as I think a long-term substitute, Tammy made me feel welcome and valued there. So thanks for that, Tammy. But I want to comment just briefly on the topic of the study session, which is artificial intelligence, and urge some caution and circumspection with that. Not to attack our tech department at all, who's amazing, and every tech I've ever encountered building at the district level has always been super helpful and super competent. But I do want to just give a teacher's perspective and a little bit of a social perspective on AI. I think from a teacher's perspective, I looked through the presentation tonight, looked through sort of drawbacks and benefits. I don't think it's super useful in my job, what I do personally. I'm just one teacher, this is just me. I see teaching as primarily a human connections job. I don't think artificial intelligence is good at doing that now, and I kind of hope it never is, because it makes me question what humans really are. I think some of the stuff that is in there, improving workflow and things, those are promises that haven't materialized yet. I will say, just from my perspective, for years of having many tech tools introduced, made available to us, asked us to use those, I think overall they've not made my job easier or more efficient. They've either just reformatted the same problems in a new way or often added a layer of hindrance. Some things I found really concerning in there, I think the prospect of using AI for human learning and connection to students is really concerning. And I think the idea of AI tutoring or AI feedback is dystopian. From my point of view, I would be pretty upset if I found out as a student I was getting AI feedback, and I wouldn't trust it to make the human connections with students that make learning really happen. I kind of suspect it's a way to continue to ask more of public education without giving us any more money. And it's not free. That's to kind of move on briefly, just some social worries about AI. A lot of the drawbacks in there, including at a time when our sort of exorbitant and morally indefensible energy demands are leading to a global climate and social crisis, we're being told by sort of tech oligarchs that we need to exponentially increase our energy demands to make the computer talk to us. And I don't see a democratic conversation happening about what we want the future of like AI to look like. And talking about the social fabric of humanity here. I know you guys aren't gonna do that, but this is a little layer of democracy. So I would ask, please don't spend a dime on AI.
Thank you,
until
Mr.
they are
Richardson.
teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented and without discussion. Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. So then we're moving on to the study session. I think we can just still start. I think they can just roll in.
Okay. So late last year, we had the conversation about our first study session, looking at AI. We've had lots of questions and we've talked to students about it. We've seen headlines and different things. So our team has put together a presentation to just give a flavor of some of the things that we're seeing now, questions, wonderings, issues, all those kind of things. It's kind of a primer to that will not in any way end all and be all to our AI conversations moving forward. But I think it will spur some interest in the board and even thoughts about policy and those kind of things as it moves forward, rapidly forward of what we see with that. So I think that I'll go ahead and pass it over to Evan and go ahead and get started.
Good evening. Excited to be here tonight and talk about something that is rapidly evolving, something that we here at TCAPS, especially I know from a tech perspective and working closely with curriculum, don't take lightly in how it can impact what's happening here in education and our students and our teachers. So though it's a very exciting development and something that we want to make sure we are kind of keeping up, with what's happening around us. We also want to be very measured in how this is kind of happening and rolling out and taking into a lot of the considerations that we'll make mention of tonight. And I think to John's point, this is certainly just kind of the beginning. Every day it's getting bigger, better, faster, and it's something that is certainly hard to wrap your hands around, but we're doing, I think, a pretty good job in leveraging the people in our district to do that as well as we can. So to kind of a point of where it's at to this point, I think this video, it's about 2 minutes, shows some of the latest developments. This is OpenAI, who's the creator of ChatGPT, and Figure One, a robotics company, showing kind of some of the combinations that they have.
Hey, Figure One, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great, can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So, based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them in?
Of course.
All right, so how do you think you did?
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
I agree. Thanks, Figure One.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
So just kind of a quick example there of what we have, from what we've started. AI has existed in a lot of different forms. I think early on, we've used it in a lot of ways. Anytime you've interacted with those really fun chat bots on a website, those are really primitive forms of AI, right? Response to you before maybe you get to a real person. And now we have things where, again, like it was pointing out, you have the dexterity to do multiple tasks at once, explain its reasoning, all while kind of then moving on to the next task and interacting with the human. So just kind of a quick example of, again, just how quickly, how powerful it's moving, and getting to, I always kind of describe it as what AI is like in the movies, right? We're seeing kind of what we've seen in some of these crazy movies of the robots, the AI assistants doing these things for us. So what we are at TCAPS, we're again trying to be really thoughtful about this approach to AI and exposing it to our staff within reason, hopefully showing them different ways that they can leverage it to make their tasks easier, accomplish some things at a more efficient rate. And we try and provide safe avenues to get exposure to that and get started with that. And so a couple examples of some of those tools, if you haven't seen them before. One really easy one that we do like to expose our staff to, because in the interest of certain things like data privacy, Goblin Tools is a website that's a real basic form, but obviously higher up than what you've seen in the past of AI, but doesn't require a login, so it's not recording any of that personal information, which we're pretty staunch about trying to make sure people are aware of that. What are we putting in these chatbots? What are we recording in these databases? And has some kind of really neat, easy ways to kind of get started with how you can leverage, again, how can you leverage AI to do that? So very simple Goblin Tools website, and then a couple of different categories of ways that you can use it to help you complete some tasks. So creating to-do lists, one of the favorite ones, a formalizer, so taking any type of text and then rewriting it. We can use this, we suggest a lot of people, if you have trouble kind of formulating emails, professionalizing them, getting able to just put your thoughts down on paper and then letting AI kind of take it to that next step for you and add the context that you might need is a really easy way. One I really like. So the consultant, it'll kind of take an analysis and give you some pros and cons, right? So asking, what are some advantages of using AI in the classroom? There's a real generic prompt for it to see what it can produce for us.
I always like to start out with any new tool by telling it how much I respect it. So when it takes over the world, it doesn't come after me.
I do try and add things like please and thank you. It's always nice because you never know when it's going to come back. Yeah, and just a casual conversation of that. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad plan.
I can't say I'm always so nice to Siri. But that's only when it's wrong.
I did actually type that into ChatGPT the first time I used it, and its response was, "I've got your back."
Interesting.
So that was like a couple of years ago.
To show, I have some examples too with Gemini when you're using it, which is Google's version chatbot. You can ask it some questions, and I've worked with David Noller, one of our ed tech coaches and secondary teacher at West Senior High. And he's had some times where he's asked the Gemini chatbot to, help him produce something. And sometimes its first thought is it goes, I can't do that. And we've recorded where he goes, you can do it. And it goes, you're right, I can do it. And then it reprocesses and then kind of spits out the answer. It goes, I'm sorry, I just had a moment. It's giving you those kind of answers. So it's interesting to have kind of some of those just normal conversational type items with it. And maybe we stumped it here, so we can go to something simpler.
Oh,
There
there you go.
goes. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. So again, just ways to start generating some content and ideas for the teachers. And I do think it's really important as these being kind of starting points, right? Something to give that content and help have our students and teachers use it to get started with something, not do the work for them. That's a big premise here too. We don't want AI to become what it's being kind of painted as, right? A homework, basically a cheat tool. I think when you're using it effectively and you're building it in and taking into the consideration of what it is in a teacher's lesson planning, it can become really powerful and again, be part of the process and not the start and end of the process so that no learning is actually done, that the student or the teacher just thinks, well, all I gotta do is put something into this chatbot and then the results are the results, I paste them and I forget it. It's about having that conversation and hopefully having that discussion. So getting the advice, getting the pros and cons, getting kind of a final evaluation here. Again, the chef, you have some ingredients. I did this one. I have milk, I have pasta, I have chicken, and I have pickles.
It's like the mystery challenge on the food
Yep.
network.
Take what's in there. Have you ever had a creamy chicken pasta with pickles? And therefore it'll take my ingredients, give me my serving sizes and the instructions on how to make it. So these are kind of fun, just kind of again, easy entry levels to use it.
Add some hot sauce to that. And see what happens.
And these are the kind of ways that for those who might be a little hesitant, those who are not maybe quite as tech savvy, they're fun ways to let them kind of explore how the basics of AI can work. And then hopefully start to have those conversations with them of how can we go deeper, what kind of what are you doing, right, in your day-to-day that you could leverage some of these tools to hopefully help you get through those processes and then spend more time working with your students, having that human interaction that we're talking about and not going through all kind of the legwork of some of this stuff that can easily be achieved by like a chatbot. So Goblin Tools is one. Gemini is another one that we're excited to promote, and the reason being in terms of thinking about our student data safety, our staff data safety, with us being a Google school, Gemini's provided almost like a walled environment for using the chatbot. So that means that data does not actually go with most of these, like when you hear about what ChatGPT is doing, it's taking, right, it's scraping all this data from the internet, it's taking everything it can in order to be able to process and do that. Well, anything we put in through if you're signed in through a TCAPS account and you're using Gemini, that data is not included in Gemini's learning language model. It's only used to process whatever that request is, and then it's forgotten. I mean, that's the promise, the agreement we have with them. So they provide that for schools and businesses who want to use that. So for us, that's a really, again, safe and easy way to, again, promote people to play with and use it, and still try and avoid putting in personal identifiable information. Regardless of whether we have a walled environment, that's something we want to avoid because we think that's really important. But we just have that extra safeguard of knowing that they're working and playing kind of in, again, a little bit safer environment that's contained, that we have some control over with all of our Google tools and Vault and safety to, again, kind of provide that extra layer. And Gemini is more of your traditional.
Is this different or the same than the Google Gemini?
This is Google Gemini.
I get it.
Yep. So when you log in with a TCAPS account, you can see it kind of identifies itself readily, right? This is Gemini for Traverse City area public schools. So then we have this tool that, again, is more specified to us in terms of it's not sharing that data out, and we can hopefully use it with a little more comfort knowing that it's really contained within that. And doing things like building lesson plans, helping them build the templates of a lesson plan. So it's not replacing our teachers in the sense of it's not doing the teaching for them. The students aren't getting every piece of information they can, but it might help that teacher create a structure for delivering some content, and then they're able to put in the parameters there. What's the standard you're using? I wanted to do some opinion writing from fourth grade, from my fourth grade teacher days. And then I can take a look at what it's produced, and is this something that I find relevant, is the breakdown, and then you can start to have it refine that. I can say, add some, here I asked it.
So, Evan, am I
Yes.
understanding correctly? It sounds like y'all are embracing it so far more for the teachers and staff benefit than the students. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of ways that the staff could benefit from using AI.
I think the students are using it as well. So the Gemini tool for 13 and up is available for our students. We have it actually linked in our cloud so they can access it there. So when the teachers are comfortable, we're definitely encouraging them to allow it, again, with Gemini being a more safer environment, that they can allow their students to then use it as well for peer, reviewing writing and then getting that feedback and then working with the teacher to see, was that feedback valuable? Has it helped them improve the writing? Younger students, for sure, we're not really encouraging them to use chatbots at this time. We don't really feel it's that appropriate with that. There are some tools that are promoting it, but we really focus on, just like the data privacy rules are for like a Gemini, our 13 and up population and accessing it directly from the student perspective.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add a little bit. I've got kind of the back end of the presentation, but I think the reality is us knowing that our kids have access to these tools out there, especially as age appropriateness, right? We have kids that we're trying to prepare for the next step and teaching them how to use this tool to foster their thinking and their learning versus replace it, right? How can you use something like this to help you study better and ask me some questions about this, or produce some flashcards for me as I'm trying to learn this concept versus give me the answer for this thing that I'm doing, or write an essay for me on this prompt, right? There's a lot of power in teaching our kids how to use AI to help enhance their learning and not like remove the learning for them, right? So a lot of discussions with kids around that.
Absolutely.
Dan, what do you think about this?
Well, if I'm just with a lens of elementary, right, it's pretty teacher based, and it's a lot of efficiency right now. As far as Magic School is a big one with elementary teachers, making connections with curriculum, making connections with MD standards. I know a big one is with CKLA, our new curriculum coming in the time that's dedicated to that. How can we make a smooth transition to other subject areas like social studies and science, where we can bring those two areas together? Like, I've already been in science and social studies district meetings, and we Google or we use Gemini or ChatGPT to say, show me the connections between CKLA and Michigan's social studies standards, right? And then they take those social studies standards and put them into each unit. That in and of itself would take weeks, right? That would take like summer weeks to actually look at, and we had it in, obviously you can have it in 15 seconds. So those are the ways I've kind of seen on the elementary end is pretty teacher heavy. But personally, just as Jesse was mentioning, just on a professional end, I use it daily as far as just the efficiency of, we even start with email, right? I was a science guy, I'm not necessarily a language arts guy. So when I write an email, I write it as fast as I can, and I hit the button at the bottom that says polish, and then I send. So you don't have to, that kind of efficiency when you're sending hundreds of emails a day possibly helps.
You said age 12 and up, or is it age 13?
13.
Okay. So is that like generally 8th grade or 7th grade for the kids? So every kid, like on their 13th birthday, all of a sudden they're going to see some tools become accessible to them, or is it at that 7th grade level?
Sorry, say that first.
The tools, you're saying at age 13 and up, so like on their 13th birthday, their TCAPS computer would allow them to use tools that they weren't able to use the day before?
Yeah, based on that, so that grade breakdown where the 13 are with their accounts, they don't have access in the cloud. Like each cloud page can be personalized in those OU groups, so they won't have access to it until they've reached that threshold. No, that's our way. But to Jesse's point, some of this conversation and just learning about AI and that discussion needs to happen, because That's all I can control within the cloud on their Chromebook. I can't control what you go home and do on your home computer. I can't control what you do on your phone. So that access is certainly there, and it's not something that I can, or nor do I want to be in charge of walling that off for everyone in every aspect of their life, but I do want to help them learn more about it and hopefully use it responsibly. Because it's not something that we are shunning the discussion about, it's something that we're, embracing and trying to kind of envelop where, again, it makes sense within our curriculum and our environment.
Well, and I would think that the biggest concern is, kids going and having an essay written by AI or something and not being their own thought, not being their own work. And on the same level, AI can actually detect that.
Not very accurately.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
there's some
not, yeah.
conversations about AI durability. So like when you give an assignment to a student, secondary mainly, and then you expect them to go off and do it, you have to be mindful as to what tools, if it's not done in my classroom setting and with me, what tools do they have access to and what's the durability, I don't know if that's the right word, but that's what comes to mind for me, of that assignment, right? Like, is it something that a kid can just type in AI and spit out at least the baseline for an essay and then work it up from there? Our instructors we're growing their knowledge in that, because I'll tell you what, kids sure figure it out pretty fast and then share it with each other, right? And so there is a lot of education on our kids on what's the science of learning, right? How do we actually learn as human beings? And how can you use this tool to unlock learning versus replace it? There's a ton there though, that if we can teach our kids to use it appropriately, that they have access to, that is pretty powerful, so.
Yeah, it's age old. It's when Google came out, we had the same thing, right? And we were having these discussions, we're talking 10 plus years ago where we were doing teaching PD around, ask questions that kids can't Google. Because then you have to enhance it, otherwise it's the same idea, right? You Google a question 15 years ago, it's very similar to AI where they can copy and paste it in.
And to Jesse's point, when this really had ramped up, the ChatGPT coming out, and the first thing I think that flooded our inboxes were AI detectors. Our program can detect AI. I just feel that's kind of a wholly inaccurate statement. I don't think those do a very good job of doing that. I think for the teachers, it's usually just more obvious knowing their student, right? The human element is just as important. They know, typically if they've had them for a while, what their writing looks like, what kind of assignment they'd submit, and having that conversation with them as opposed to, it's just going from one to the other. If the student's just generating an essay and submitting it, and the teacher's just taking the essay and putting it in the checker, and then that's all the interaction. And again, we've kind of failed in this use of AI. It's about kind of, are they using it, to Jesse's point, like how is the lesson designed to where that can come into play? And then them relying on the fact that they still do have these human relationships with the students and what they're doing and what they're asking them to do is far more important than us trying to invest in some holy AI checker. This will catch it 98% of the time. I just haven't seen that accuracy, and so that's not something we definitely promote as kind of the way to address this issue. It's definitely more on the education value and how we're integrating it.
I think that it'll be an interesting challenge. One of the things that I was always aware of, like when I went to law school, half of what they taught us, 1,000 pages a week we were reading, right? And then you had to learn how to condense it. And that was the whole aim of law school. It was not really even to learn all the law, because you couldn't learn all of the law in 3 years. You just couldn't. There were whole classes that we got tested on that we didn't even take in law school. You had to learn it in 3 weeks. But it was like, it was the mental muscle that they taught us in doing the process. And so for me, like the challenge is here too. It's the critical thinking, the ability to take information and put it into a form that gives voice, right? And so how do we move students in a way to use this so that it becomes part of their critical thinking? And I know we've even been using this like in the legal world, mostly to gather information, which it's great for, but I'm still a little bit concerned about if I ask it to create a motion, and your prompts have to be like perfect. It's not ever a great thing. And then I don't entirely trust all of it. I still have to go back and read it and actually I've never created a whole motion on one of these because I don't trust it that much yet.
And it's okay too, because I think, the interesting part of this is what values are built into it.
Right.
What, you know, what are those different thoughts of it, that what perspective was it written from? You know, that very well may be different than your own.
Right.
You know, and so I think that's what's interesting. You know, the ways that I've seen it used well is for kids to take all that information, condense it, them to do that, and then to be able to say, okay, now we want you to debate the opposite thought, and have students do that. So if you just printed something off, you didn't comprehend what it said, you can't give the opposite viewpoint or to debate the topic, which I think is a higher order level thinking skill that we want to get to versus just rote knowledge, you know, of something from that standpoint. So that's the goal of what we're trying to get to for kids. And I think, you know, that's what I've seen, you know, talking to our kids. I think the teachers, our AP teachers that are using it to look at FRQs and look at that and then be able to say, okay, now give another level of thought to this based on what that feedback is to go back and do that. And so I think that's where it's powerful.
It was interesting. I saw some Interlochen kids using it this past weekend for a production they did, the interdisciplinary. They did a dance, they did music, and they did a big video production with it. And we had a panel discussion afterwards, and hands down, everybody was like, it was interesting, but we don't really like it. But they said that was like one of the biggest things was the amount of prompts, how many times they had to go back in to get something that worked well and that worked well together. It was a lot. Like some of them did like 1,000 prompts, you know, for a small section. But I thought that one of the most interesting things, and this is getting out into the weeds, but when they talked about the music that AI makes, it has no concept of tempo. You either have to feed it a tempo and it stays on that tempo, but otherwise it doesn't. And it doesn't always think within our parameters.
But isn't that a cool thing to learn the tempo? And to understand what that is and how to regulate that.
Right, and they said that made it kind of interesting because they couldn't create any music AI that followed human
tempo moves. It changes.
Yeah, it just wasn't there yet. That's kind of interesting.
And to your point, I think a healthy distrust of it at this point is the way to go, because again, it goes to what we just were all talking about, a critical thinking mindset and using it, but really again leveraging it because it is very powerful and how it can blend in with that to accomplish some really good things. So some key terms that, you know, we refer to when we're thinking about, so just AI literacy in general is something that we harp on. So, you know, the understanding and the ability to critically evaluate and use these AI technologies. Thinking and teaching the students about that potential bias in AI specifically, so that AI will have its own kind of built-in biases based on all the information it's gleaning, just like we all create our own biases. And that's really important that they have that concept. So again, we don't just take it for its word at every moment, every prompt we put in there. Prompting, right, is very important. From my perspective, being the tech guy, data privacy is another really important part. You know, what are we putting into these learning language models? What is it collecting? What tools can I come up to with agreements like Google and Gemini with our current environment that I have a certain set of assurances that that data is being protected and separated from the larger model, feeling better about that. And then again, letting our students use it in that controlled environment and our teachers. Something that was here well before AI, but the digital citizenship portion. So kind of how does that apply now with this, again, kind of new, ever-growing, powerful tool? We talk about it with all sorts of other digital things, but AI is a big proponent of needing to kind of be aware of that digital citizenship role. Just obviously what AI is, artificial intelligence. Hallucinations is an interesting one. So when AI kind of just makes stuff up, there's some interesting stats out there. You know, I think it's Google Gemini wants really badly to be your friend. So they say that a lot of times Gemini might do its hallucinations because it just wants to make you happy. Like that's kind of what's built into its programming. So you need to be aware, and we need to always kind of, they have their taglines on the bottom. We need to include our taglines. Please check this information. Not all of this might be accurate. You know, take it for what it's worth and then process it that way. Don't believe everything you see. And then, you know, thinking about it as all these are these large language models. So trained on vast amounts of data. ChatGPT at this point has used all man-made has scraped basically all man-made data in the world and is now using synthetic, basically ChatGPT created data to continue to grow. So they've went through that whole process, and just kind of mind-boggling to think about. And then to what we were talking about, prompting. Prompting at this point is also very important to get out of it, what you're putting into it. You have to be very intentional about what you're prompting it with, and then again, how you redirect it, kind of to your point. And it may take a few times. You may need to continue to ask it to solidify what you're trying to get to, and then start to, again, critically evaluate, okay, what is this output? Is this worth it? Am I getting to where I need to go? Is it really kind of adding value, or are we just kind of spinning our wheels and having fun talking to a robot?
And so like that's one, when I think about how do we teach kids to use AI appropriately, teaching kids how to ask a really good question and how to ask follow-up questions and how to know whether the information you're getting is helping you go in the right direction is actually a great just life skill to have. And so that's another area I think we can help educate some of our kids on how to use AI and how to prompt and ask the right questions and ask better questions and know whether the output is helping us go where we need to go. So,
absolutely. So I think we
True of people as well.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
just AI.
Well, this all goes back to the old, like, verify your source, like citations and even more so.
Trust but
Subject.
verify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scrutiny.
So on that note, you might get into this later, so that's fine if we need to wait, but I was just curious, so what exactly have our teachers been instructed to do? What kind of guidelines have they been given? And then also, you know, what are the students getting and when and how? I mean, is it like third hour at the start of the year or start of the semester? I mean, I'm just curious how our kids are being guided in all this.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit. So we have a guidance document that we've tried to kind of build upon. I think we're going to talk to later about, we're starting an AI learning series, which is actually starting tomorrow as an opportunity for a variety of our staff, right? Not just our teachers, but it's including the teachers as well and administrators to kind of have those conversations. And we shared kind of early on, I brought Danielle Brostrom here to talk about our draft form of that AI guidance document that she's put together. Danielle's done some incredible work kind of in the AI field, specifically with TCAPS. And so we feel like we have that somewhat solidified, though it's a growing kind of collaborative document that will inevitably change as these things change, but trying to promote that as, to this point, like what this guidance is, how we can use it, what the teachers can refer to, and as well as the students on kind of where this falls. And hopefully having that information kind of flow down from our teachers, using it, sharing it, and then kind of instructing that with the students. So you have kind of a couple different forms. Again, generative AI is your Geminis, your ChatGPTs. They're generating content. Now they're using other data to generate that, but again, something to be very explicit with on our users about what that means, right? What the generative AI model is, what they're being trained on, what that can mean for it. And then you have your predictive AIs. These are ones that, again, I kind of said have been around for a while. Your smart reply in your text, that is a form of AI. It's finishing your thoughts for you. You swipe over and you can finish your statement. Sounds good. I think my wife's sick of me hitting the same buttons on my phone every time I reply. She knows at this point and tells me to stop it and just respond to her. So, but those have been around. And again, that's just this form of AI. So that's also important too, I feel like, in kind of, again, sharing that information, is that they've been dealing with different forms of this. It's obviously evolving, but they have an idea of kind of what this can look like and talking about what that means at different levels.
Yeah, that generative AI is what makes it hard for teachers to use AI detective software to know if a student has just copied and pasted, right? It's not like what they were looking for before is like large chunks of text that like they could actually find in another document, right? But now that it's generating that text, right, it doesn't exist somewhere else. So our teachers have been really, really great about, I would say, number one, being upfront with kids. Hey, here's the assignment and here are the tools you can and can't use, right? This might be an assignment, you'll see in a second here, that you can use no AI on, and here's why. This is an assignment you can use it to get started on, because it does raise the floor for a lot of our kids. It makes learning more accessible. If the idea is for me to get writing and make it better, maybe I'm not someone who's really good at like getting the ideas out on the paper and I kind of know what I want and AI can help me get there. And then I can do the work of making it better and polishing it. And then when can you use your full on AI? You can use whatever you want to with what the task is. So there's some continuum there of that. And our teachers too have worked with, there's some pretty slick features just in Google Docs where you can sort of see how is a document generated. So you can look for like those large copy and paste and some of those things when they don't need them based on that scale of what the teachers expect. So being really clear with the kids, hey, I know these tools are out here and here's what the assignment's for and here's how much AI you can use on it is actually, I've seen the best success in the classrooms with that. Because kids just want to know, just give me the bound. For most kids are like, cool, okay, I can do it. Oh, I can use it to get started. Awesome, I'll use it to get started. And then the teacher wants me to do this with it, so.
And those mindsets, to me, and I think in general from my work with the group, are important to not just, we're not taking the approach of kind of hiding underneath the bed and letting AI come to us. We want to kind of meet it where it's at and have those discussions with the kids and the students and the teachers so that everyone kind of is growing with it together, as opposed to, again, trying to be like, am I just trying to catch some student using ChatGPT to write this or complete this assignment? We don't want that to be what this is about. This is a bigger topic and a kind of a bigger concept that we're trying to promote. So again, like I said, AI literacy is kind of a big recurring theme that we continue to talk about with people to make sure. So we want, what are the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes needed to engage with AI safely and effectively? What does that skill set look like? Do we all, at this point, understand the AI's capabilities, what its limitations are, any of those potential impacts, so that as they're making those decisions on how it applies to whatever it is they see fit, that this could be a useful tool for, that they're taking into those considerations. And again, that they're not shying away from the fact that they're going to see it, whether in social studies class, they're going to see it in the next level in college, they're going to see it in the workforce. So, we want to be upfront about what that looks like and hopefully prepare them for success. So we want them, again, understanding the AI, what that is. We want them to be able to hopefully evaluate the AI, again, have that healthy skepticism about what it's producing and what that means for how it might apply to completing a lesson or a task. Looking at those things like bias, thinking about the privacy, data security, and any sort of ethical implications that it might have. So, and then integrating it. So again, thinking about how is this going to be integrated in a way that is meaningful, is safe, and then is going to add value to what we're doing and not just maybe accomplish the task so I don't have to think about it anymore. Something else that kind of we apply to is thinking about the 80-20 rule, which has a couple different applications. But when we talk about it with AI, it's thinking about AI as the ability to accomplish kind of 80% of those mundane tasks that you want to do, because that's great. That saves us a lot of time and we can move on to more meaningful things and really focus on the 20% of kind of critical thinking that we might need to do a task, and how are we redesigning to Jesse's point about what is the assignment I'm asking them to do, right? So if I'm asking them to do something, again, that can be really easily just accomplished by a quick prompt in Gemini, then is that the right assignment to be doing, or should I really start rethinking how I'm trying to deliver that and what it's getting out of them?
And like I was in a 9th grade US history class a couple weeks ago, and the teacher was having them have a map of Europe and memorize where the countries were and where the capitals were. It's a pretty rote task, right? Any kid could look that up anywhere. And the teacher looked at me and he's like, well, yeah, but we're gonna, we're going into World War II, and I just need him to, these conflicts, I need him to understand where these countries are located and why and what their role might have been and why it would have been that way just based on their borders. And that can't be something that, oh wait, I gotta look up where France is again. Oh wait, now I gotta look up where Germany is. I need them to already have some of that. And I was like, yeah, so it's not that we're removing all these rote skills. We still need them for purpose of then having these next level thinkings and discussions, right? They're still really important. There's stuff that we do need kids to practice and have. Like I'm a big fan of math fluency, which means you actually know some of your basic operations and facts, because then you can factor a quadratic equation later on or whatever else, right? That matters for a later on skill. So
Multiplication tables when you don't have a calculator.
sometimes they matter. Not maybe like 2 digits is a lot, but.
It's actually a big discussion about fluency we have in elementary, because once you get to 4th grade and you start division and you don't know your multiplication tables, and math gets really hard, and kids end up hating math because they don't have that fluency.
I don't have that, I can't do it, I can't,
Long division, yeah.
don't understand.
So as I mentioned before, these are not the only exclusive AI tools that are probably, that I know are being used in TCAPS. These are ones that we're promoting for some of those reasons. Both Gemini and Notebook are Google tools. So we have a kind of, like I said, a level of control and kind of walled containment of those. So it feels like a safer way to introduce that when it comes to the context of us using it, meaning the students and the teachers. Notebook LM right now, it's mainly just for the staff. If you haven't seen it, I'll go over it here in a little bit. Maybe at the conclusion of the slideshow, has some really cool features and some really cool applications to take a ton of data and really process it in a multitude of different ways. It's just, that to me has become, again, more like the movie AI, like what I think about when I just want to put some information in there and really produce some kind of interesting results or some analysis that would take me days, and I can do it in minutes and then provide access to other people. And then again, like the Goblin tool is a super low level version of that, but an easy way to kind of get started with that kind of stuff. But here's obviously a couple others that I know are out there and people are familiar with. School AI and Magic School are really specifically obviously generated towards schools, have a lot of kind of feature sets that are made to do that. Teachers can build specific chatbots to do something. We've seen them where at lower levels building the tattletale bot, so a student can go kind of tell their problems to the AI first. It reports back, has a backside for the teacher so that they can see what the students are saying, and then the chatbot might try and talk the student with it before they go, the tell 3 before me kind of rule. Now you can tell maybe this chatbot, I've seen that application, just kind of an interesting, unique way to use it so that the kids are starting to process that information. You can come, so if any of these tools, like a School AI or Magic School, rose to the top kind of with our staff, it's something we can do. That's another one we could enter into like a data agreement with to try and again kind of protect that and create those accounts. So it's not something we've done to this point, but that's possible. And then ChatGPT, obviously kind of the first one on the block that everyone's really familiar with. Claude's another really powerful one. If you haven't seen it, kind of does some really, really cool stuff about kind of coding and building apps right within the chatbot if you're using that. So just, again, super incredible, powerful tools that you can use for a variety of applications.
And we've seen samples of teachers who use more so the Magic School and School AI to say, hey, I'm teaching this standard in 3rd grade, and I've got a kid who loves monster trucks, right? And what we know about like the science of reading, for example, is if I've got background knowledge in something, I'm actually going to be more successful at decoding words and getting some of that development. If I know what I'm reading and what I'm reading about, maybe as a 3rd grade or 2nd grade teacher, I don't know a lot about monster truck rallies. I can use one of these and pop in the standard, and it actually will create a story or an activity for that kid that gives you that human element. I know Dan loves monster truck rallies. I know that Dan's reading at this level, and this is the standard I'm trying to. Can you give me something that I can use to teach Dan that will connect with his interest and already be at that background level for him, so that we can work on decoding words? And it's that time saver for teachers. Means that now I can think more about the relationships and how to set kids up to be successful. So it's pretty cool.
So as we mentioned, prompting's kind of really important, and discussing what that looks like. How are we going to successfully prompt AI? How are the students, when they're able to use those tools in different lessons, going to prompt it? So making sure, clarity is key, being very explicit about what you want, finding that level with how much information you do need to provide it if you're trying to get some sort of output. Taking a look at what technique you're using, like how are you going to ask those questions? Are you going to be nice and say please and thank you to make sure that it doesn't come back and bite you? Figuring out how much context you need to provide. I think what we're seeing is that's becoming less and less, maybe in a scary way. I've had it have a couple of times where I've just mentioned something like, I had it code an app to request access in PowerSchool. And all I said was use PowerSchool and include categories of PowerSchool that they might need. And I didn't tell them what it was. I didn't even say PowerSchool is, a student information system. And it goes, okay, did they want attendance? Do they want grades? Do they want discipline? So like it's obviously has some of that data. But again, normally, or I think maybe early on, I would certainly need to be including all of that. And it's more and more now, it's kind of like, I think I know what you're talking about. It's getting closer. So we need to be aware of that, right? And be thinking about that as you're doing it. And then the format, the format matters. What that prompt looks like can be important, and that in itself is kind of the lesson. If we are going to use it, how are we formatting these prompts? How are we instructing that to make sure we're getting that highest level of output possible?
So your data pool, the TCAPS data pool is just getting more sophisticated now with.
Right, so the Gemini will learn off our data pool, and I mean, it takes in, so it's allowed to, it has all kind of whatever Gemini's had before, but the nice part is any of the new data, because if you're using ChatGPT, it's taking that and immediately saying, great, we're adding this to the pot, and now the next person who asked down the road, we know that Holly had entered this and we could use that as a reference point. We're at least safe in knowing that's not the case if they're using Gemini via the TCAPS account. It's not gonna go in there for anyone outside of TCAPS and be like, oh, well, Jesse was talking about, differentiation in this lesson, so we can apply that. And someone asking Gemini down the road in another town. So that, doesn't solve all of our problems, but it makes us feel a little bit better about using that kind of tool in that sense.
And it helps when you're analyzing data. So if we upload data from NWA, ChatGPT, I can do that as an attachment where I can put a spreadsheet, but if I do it in Gemini, obviously that's protected with what we're doing, and that data doesn't get out for anyone to use.
So there's a link there. We have our guidance document, which we could you'll have access to take a look through. It's a long, well thought out document, but some of the highlights is just, as we've been saying, we really want to implement AI thoughtfully. It's something that we don't take lightly. It's super powerful, and we want it to be used and useful and discussed, but we want to do it with a purpose and be very thoughtful about it. I think we all recognize that it's offering a massive opportunity for us to enhance kind of what we're doing with the educational experience within reason. So we just need to keep that in mind and see how are we going to do that within what we feel like are our parameters, our kind of boundaries of it. I think it's important, as this goes for me, for anything ed tech related, the tools themselves are not the initiative. It's not just about the tools. It's been my thumping point since I got into ed tech. It's not just about the tool. It's what is the tool letting you do, right? And if that tool is not the right one, we can move on to the next one. We want to have that same approach with AI. It's not just about Gemini. Like I said, we have that focus because of some of the protections it allows us, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't look down the road to others if we start to find that they're developing at a better rate and feel like it's got more value to us. So like I said, kind of approaching that just how we do any type of educational technology. We're not just doing it to do it. We want to be really thoughtful about it. And then again, kind of the privacy and security of but our school data as a whole, that's including our staff and anyone else who's using it, it is a priority. It's something that I know my team takes very seriously, and due to all the fun circumstances we've already experienced here, we want to be very, very good stewards of that data and make sure we're being very wise and thoughtful about how that's being shared, and also just educating people on the right kinds of data to put into some of these tools and when to be a little more generic and maybe hold off on sharing certain things in order to make sure that that data privacy is kept paramount.
Oh, my turn.
Yeah.
Okay. So with some of this we already talked about, but I wanted to sort of update you on what do we see in the classrooms right now? How are teachers using it? The last, I think it was Erica who was at the last superintendent board with the student advisory board. It was all about AI, and so that was great about like how are our kids already using it? That's our secondary kids. But so I listed some of them there. I linked in a great article too on just student usage and sort of what we see out there right now with our kids. I was at Central High School the other day, and there were a bunch of kids huddled around a table and they were working on their physics, and they were using AI to give them more problems, not to give them the answers of the problems that the teacher had assigned them, but they were preparing for a quiz of some sort, and they were just saying, hey, give me some more problems like this. I'm in a physics class, give me some more problems like this. and it was producing the problems, and then they were checking their thinking, and the one girl was like, we got that wrong, ask it how it did that, ask it to walk it through, and they would ask it that, and then it would explain it to them. And so again, it's about how are we using it to enhance the learning, not here's my worksheet AI, give me all the answers, which it can totally do that in a lot of different things. We do have a few teachers who are using it to provide feedback to students, and they're using it to provide feedback faster, or to look for patterns. One of our AP teachers in particular likes to use it just so that hey, there's an essay we wrote in class. She's like, I'll throw it all in there. I'll say, hey, give these kids some feedback. She's like, I kind of comb through. Most of it's spot on. Gives the kids feedback right away. And then she says, hey, what are the patterns that you see in all my classes? Are there specific hours that you see certain things that kids missed or are stronger in? And then she can think about how it's weird that second hour was better at that than third hour. So what do I need to do in that hour versus this hour? She's someone who's a little bit ahead of the curve in general in technology in the district. So, but just how do I enhance what I'm doing and support kids better at their learning?
Gives her the power of a data team, which we also do, right, in groups, but it's at her fingertips and she can do it kind of on the fly. So again, just kind of adding to that toolbox in a way that we would never be able to really do without a lot more time and a lot more investment into that.
Google Translate's a huge one too. Oh yeah.
Do you think we're at the same level of usage in TCAPS? Just ballpark guessing. So a quarter of US teens have used ChatGPT for schoolwork in 23.
I would guess it would be higher than that.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was low, a quarter.
That was probably like a month ago.
Right on that one.
Well, 25.
I mean,
January
some of the
20.
things I'm seeing, even in college, I wonder when she can understand her professor at the time, and the computer can. So it puts a full summary of everything that's being. So if she misses anything, she can go through and do it. So there's a lot of. I mean, it's going to be used. I think we're all using it. Just as you said, whether it be on the phone. I mean, we are all using. Some may use it more than others, but we are probably all using it. So.
Mm-hmm. And teaching students how to use it to get the learning out of it and not to escape the learning, and that's and sometimes it's going to be learned by, I copied and pasted and now I know nothing. Oh, okay. That's real, right? This is a nice sort of graphic of what I was talking about. The more transparent the teachers are with students, the more likely the kids are actually to do exactly what's asked and know, why am I learning this? And why is the teacher asking me to do this? And there's been some pretty good thinking too on our teachers about what do I actually want kids to walk away knowing or able to do after this assignment, right? Am I teaching them something that's just busy work? Kids can see through that. But this tool kind of totally removes that from the game, right? Or is there something with this, like I said, that example with the countries? No, I'm teaching them to memorize where things are in their capitals, but then so that we can have more discussions about why this country would have maybe not gotten involved quicker than this country over here. Oh, that makes sense, right? Or why they would have wanted this country as their ally because of their access to waterways or another resource, or, we need kids to have some of that, basic knowledge to get there too. So I found that more transparent teachers can be with kids, the more likely they are for kids to use it appropriately, and the more thought they put into their assignment, especially something that they're asking kids to walk out of their classroom and produce. They need to know what all is out there. Is really important.
Are you seeing teacher and student satisfaction going up in relation to this?
That's kind of like a up and down, I think, depending on, who the person is and where we are. I think, so what we've really done is we've tried to create space at the beginning for our teachers just to learn about it. Some of our staff just didn't know about it. Sometimes our kids know more about the technology going on out there and they learn about it faster than our adults do, right? And so part of it was giving them the space to experiment and dabble and learn, and then start thinking about, okay, number one, how does this affect what I'm teaching and what I ask my kids to do if I know they have access to this? What more could we do? Or how do I need to frame things so that they're using this appropriately? I would say more satisfaction. Some people are happier, some people are not.
I was just thinking if you could get rid of some of the busy work and cut down on some of that required time, that the satisfaction go up.
I think we've really been talking about, like Dr. Van Wagner said, like, how do we engage kids in conversations or debates or, hey, we all, process this information. Now let's talk about it and let's have that human connection and element about it. That's how I can actually tell whether you've learned it and been processing it, right?
Yeah, so you know the information, now what problem does it solve? From that element.
Well, see, then the third audience is the parents. And are the parents feeling really separated, because of this knowledge base? And I don't know if there's some way to bridge that to some degree as well.
Yeah, and I think the better we can teach our kids how to use AI to help their learning, I really actually hope that, like, if I'm a parent and my kid's in honors physics and I can't help them, but I can help them use a tool that could help them, right? Like having those kids, watching those kids, like ask it for another problem. Oh, ask it for a problem like that. And having the one kid go, none of us could that. Explain his thinking. And someone else was like, flag that one. We need to ask Mr. McGurn about that one. And I was like, oh, this is cool. They're identifying what they know and what they don't know, and then trying to use it to practice more of where they think they need. Like this is using it in the right way, right? So it was interesting because those kids had definitely, someone had taught them along the way of how to use it to help their learning, not replace it. Okay, the goal is to enhance and not remove the learning. Kind of put some examples of different do's and different subject areas there for you to think about. Like, I really think about some of our high-end specialty areas or some of our kids who just need math is a big one. We struggle to get math tutors or more math support outside of the classroom for our kids that's like really good. And I think that's something that our parents struggle then when kids come home and are stuck. How do I help my kid get unstuck? I do think there's some room there for AI to help with that. Not to remove the human element or the teacher in the classroom, but to help the kid. I need another example. Can you explain that example to me?
And you go back to just as far as Google Translate goes, I just worked with it the other day. My kid's in Spanish 1 in 7th grade. We have to practice a conversation. He has his exam. How do you get through that? How do you practice conversation when I don't know any Spanish? Right? So ChatGPT does have a voice now that you can say, ask me simple questions about if I'm a Spanish 1 student in Spanish. And then you can answer the questions in English, and then they can say if that's correct or not. So just as far as, and that, the language barrier throughout our schools, it's been used, that and other software programs to really help, not only with kids, but then obviously what you just mentioned, that communication with parents is so much better so quickly. Like for just as simply as a parent coming in and asking to pick up their child and they can't speak English, and now we can translate any language that they're speaking and help with anything, health questions, enrollment, grades, parent-teacher conferences. It's a pretty big list that we've knocked out.
Yeah, there have been some great barriers that we've removed and been able to,
And it's not like those programs didn't exist before. They're just so accessible now that they're on your iPhone and it can instantly happen.
And you're hoping like everything that they are translating correctly.
Can't take hold.
It's not,
Might be ungrammatical, but you can get
Yeah.
the gist across.
well, some words are so close that it doesn't take a whole lot to get it going down the wrong path.
Yeah, and Evan's right. We've the three of us went to an AI conference a month ago, I guess that was. And we've seen some states that are some school districts that are really going fast in a lot of different directions, and we're being really thoughtful and purposeful about like, how do we do this? How do we do this right for our staff, for our kids, and for our parents? We've seen some of all of these in different schools around the states. We have seen there was a chemistry teacher who he made a bot and I think he used school AI where he would upload the worksheets for kids that he was giving them, and he would say, hey, don't give answers, just coach kids through these questions. And so when kids got stuck in this honors chemistry class at home, they could use that bot to help them get unstuck, but not to get the answers, right? He already had kind of restricted it on that. I don't know, providing that support was pretty cool and pretty slick, right? And so we've had some conversations about where would that make things more accessible. Some of our kids and still, even though they haven't got a great relationship with their teachers, or maybe just a teacher in the building, feel embarrassed to say, I don't understand that and I need to see it one more time in the classroom in front of their peers. Or maybe the teacher is only available before or after school and there's some availability here for us to provide some targeted support to kids that I think is directed by the teachers and how they want that to look. We've seen some schools do some pretty cool virtual field trips with an AI. So they get those VR goggles on and do some of those. I don't think we're quite there yet, but
We don't quite have the class sets and the VR goggles, but hey, the time's coming.
Next month.
Yeah, I've had the chance to visit schools that have.
yeah.
I had the chance to go to visit a very impoverished Compton, California.
Yeah.
And a part of a Verizon grant. Every single classroom had it. And the kids went on field trips across the world every week.
It's cool. Can you remind us what the name of that association or fellowship
It's the
you're
League
in?
of Innovative Schools. Yeah.
We've seen some schools, like Evan alluded to, do some restorative activities. Like it might be as simple as, hey, there was a playground dispute about this, and the AA can actually just type right in there, hey, can you give me a little social story on not throwing snowballs on, and boom, and
Don't put rocks in snowballs.
don't put rocks and snowballs. It can create a social story that's appropriate for kids at this age level or reading level, and they can use that as part of that educational tool with those kids. We've seen with some of the high school students who maybe we've got a student that we've caught with a dab or with a vape pen or something like that, and we can do some type of like education on, what the impact of that is, and having some bots where the kids kind of put in information and the bot talks back to them, and still the administrator or the counselor can see the back end and sort of watch what some of that interaction looks like. It's very interesting and powerful. We talked a little bit about the feedback. I'm interested a lot on what this means for us long-term for some of our curriculum purchases and what it looks like, right? We spend a lot of money buying consumable workbooks and paper workbooks that don't fit every kid when we buy the exact same workbook for all second graders or all sixth graders, right? We all know that, right? We do the best we can with that, but how can we maybe use AI and what we know about our kids to actually produce better learning tools for them? So I'm interested in what that looks like in the future.
Well, it's curriculum purchases that, I think old curriculum purchases was 8 to 10 years, and now they're thinking it's more should be 3 to 5. Just, that's how, I think it evolves quickly enough that, and I think the learning evolves quickly enough that term should be much shorter.
But the cost doesn't go down.
No, because then they get you for the online license part.
Exactly.
There's always something.
Lots of considerations here. I'll just say, like, the root of education is a relationship. It's having that relationships with your peers and with your teachers in the classroom, period. Like, that's what education is about. And this is about how do we even promote more time for that, and how do we use that and the learning to enhance that for kids and for our staff. So I think that that's something that will always stay at the heart of it. You have to have that human connection. It's education.
I think it's really interesting because really, like, the amount of data that we get now from the internet, from all of these things, it's really exploded over 10 years, maybe 20 if we go back that far. And there are pluses and minuses for that, like spatially in our brains. We're all overworked, we're all tired, we all have brain fog because we get too much thrown at us all the time. And this is actually a tool that could help us with that.
Or else it'll combust our brains.
Could do that too. I mean,
You're being optimistic. You could synthesize.
I'm a
that.
Sagittarius. I'm an optimist.
So any rabbit hole you want with unlimited data.
We do have some 3 teachers in particular who are just like out there on the cusp. We have more than these 3 that are, helping other teachers, helping our district, helping explore what's out there. Danielle is very connected across the state of different educational, tech tools that are out there in general, but she's just been great resource for our staff. Evan talked a little bit about that little graphic on the side there. We're super excited. When John and I talked early in this year, he said, we really wanted to create space for all of our staff to learn about this. And I kind of was like, okay. So Evan and I have been brainstorming a lot, and we're tomorrow night we're more ready than, I'm making that sound, we're very ready. Gonna kick off learning series, and we're opening that up to our teachers, yep, our administrators, yep, and also our support staff, our AAs, our admin assistants who can use AI to make their jobs more efficient so that then they can spend a little bit more time greeting that parent, spending time with that kid who might need that little extra help. If I can take the announcements and throw them through AI and shorten them and get them ready and cleaned up that fast, now when that kid comes in to say good morning, I have even more time to sit and look at them in the eye and say good morning and check in with them. So we're doing a 3-part series on that, starting that tomorrow night at West Senior High. We're paying all of our staff through a grant, so that's not coming out of our general funds. Evan and his team are leading it up. Danielle and Dustin are taking the teacher group. Dan and I are taking the administrator group. And then my assistant, Emily Spica, is gonna work with the AAs. She's been building AA for years, and she has already surveyed them about, hey, what are some parts of the job that you think AI might help you with? And so we're just excited to sort of hit all those different employee groups. It's not everyone in TCAPS, but we feel like it's a good mix to provide sort of, they have different roles and what tools might they use and how might they use them.
Yeah, it's an important start, and to Jesse's point with John kind of pushing us and really supporting the fact that we need to create that space so that we can get more of all of our people on kind of that level playing field, that same page, because we're still probably talking in pockets right now of what you're seeing, right? And we need to try as best we can. It's always hard, especially at our size of a district, to kind of create that foundation, have everyone be at a certain level of understanding, knowledge, so that we know that that exposure is somewhat leveled throughout. And so this to me is an exciting start to get that excitement going, and then work in. So this is kind of like the after hours, like Jesse said, we're paying people to come, and then how are we then building that into just what they're doing, right? And how does that gonna permeate through? So like I said, just an exciting way to get it started, and I think it'll generate hopefully a lot of buzz and get people interested and be sharing with their colleagues who couldn't come. You should check this out. I think some of the things that we're hopefully sharing with them that again are saving time, but then taking it well beyond that real basic use of it.
So will these 3 sessions be identical to each other, or are they scaffolded to go from beginning to advanced?
Yep. They're building upon one another.
But we're letting staff, they're like, oh, I can come on February 5th, but not the 20th. That's fine. Come when you can come. They are going to be different. We're hoping that people can come to all 3, but if they can't, they can make 2 out of the 3. That's better than 0. We tried to pick a location that we had a big enough space, adult furniture. I mean, there were some, but also like some people were like, why aren't we on the east side? I'm like, next time.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We're kind of like dabbling with what can we do. Our thinking was we get back from the holiday, we have from now to spring break, a nice chunk of time. What can we expose our staff to? Who's going to respond? What will that look like? And then that'll give us a feeling for, okay, now what's next, right? Where do we need to go from here?
What percentage of the staff have registered so far?
I think we had just over 50 last I was looking.
That was,
That was like
50 bodies or 50%?
50 bodies,
50
50
people,
bodies.
okay.
50% would be a lot.
Okay.
I'd be super excited and also terrified if
I would
50%.
I'd be a little scared. I'd be a
It'd
little
be
scared. I'd
a
be-
double-edged sword there, but hey, we're hoping to get there. Like I said, it's more about kind of spreading that out and getting everyone on at least as close to the same page as we can with this.
Both of our high schools, our larger high schools, have done a series with their teaching staff because it does hit our high school students a little sooner too. It's out there, how to use it, how to kind of maybe escape learning with some of the tools. And we've done a lot of talking about how do we learn as human beings, and it's hard, and that's okay. And learning is actually uncomfortable because I didn't know it and I have to make lots of mistakes. And so you actually have to have a lot of those conversations, especially with teenagers, about it, that like it's okay, you're frustrated and don't know this. You're in like, this high school level course, and like we're gonna keep working at it,
So you mentioned the guidelines, and I did skim them, and now those, can you just give us like the chronology of when were those rolled out district-wide to the staff, to the students? And I noticed there's even a letter to parents. It's dated, last updated late October of 2024, but has that been mobilized out?
So that's kind of part of what I'd say we're discussing this within this learning series. So it's been shared but not widely. So that's part of, I think, this conversation that we're hoping to start to have with staff is taking a look at that guidance document and letting those folks know, and also spreading the word that here's how we're trying to here's that foundational piece that you can hopefully refer to in looking at that, and then kind of pushing that out as a widespread. This is for now how we're trying. It was important, we played around with how this looks, because there's a lot of different ways that districts across the state, across the country are trying to approach it. Is it creating a policy? Is a policy not flexible enough with the changing of that? So it's like, okay, can we do some type of guidance document that, again, we can grow and develop? It was in draft most of last year. That's where Danielle had started piecing it together from sources like Michigan Virtual, which has done a lot of work there, and other organizations she's worked with. And like I said, I think as we develop this series, we finally have felt like we've come to this place where it's not really, we're comfortable with this as it's not a draft. It is going to be a growing document, but this is something we can point to. And so with this learning series, here's where we can really kind of introduce it and be like, here you go. Here is a reference point to your question, Josie. Here's where you can kind of refer to and start to have those conversations if you're totally unsure or you don't have anywhere else that you thought of, or you're not really working directly with it at this point. Kind of, let's use this guidance document, start that conversation, and then kind of hopefully develop some questions, get curious, and continue that development.
So is the goal to finalize it through these learning sessions that you're holding in the next couple of months, and then roll it out to parents, students, and staff by the fall? Sorry. Well, I know it'll be continuous, one of these continuous improvement things, but just I saw like the sample parent letter, the sample student letter, the sample staff letter, and for the staff and students there to sign it. So I just was curious, is that going to be an expectation for next school year?
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily have like those are just, again, kind of some examples pulling from of how we're sharing that information. I think that's going to be up for discussion, certainly as the staff, and then administration, of how we see that going, and if something like that, those letters truly need to go home and be signed, or are these points of just ways to share that information out and kind of embrace with the community and bring the parent stakeholder group in on that. I think that's still very much up for debate on how the most effective way to do that, and if it needs to be, like you said, like that letter is going out for sure and everyone needs to sign it. I definitely don't think we're there yet as a group, or feel like that's the right direction to go, but it's more that conversation piece and the other core information of that document on kind of how they're using AI tools and what they could use from that letter to share that out.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, it's a lot, and I think it looks great, and I hope we all take a look at it. And I appreciate the prioritizing equity to making sure all of our students, it was one of my questions. I know all 13-year-olds have access to it, but I just want to make sure, like, I love honors physics can do it too, but maybe our Thai kids can also do it, or general ed kids, especially with math tutoring. So I appreciate that equity piece.
Yeah, that's really important. I guess one of my questions, so obviously, I think in this room, we probably get that a lot of people using it, a high percentage, I'm guessing 75% are using it, and it's going up rapidly. And I think we all understand that. I think this is, I guess this is my question, is bringing the staff up to, because a lot of people I probably talked to last year were like, AI is just another new technology fad that's gonna come and go. Whereas this has really been around for 15 years, everyone's using it, and like when you start showing people, even the people who hate it, and I'm not necessarily saying I love the concept, but in reality speak, you use some examples. I dropped some code I wrote in the 90s and asked it to update it to like current standards, and it literally highlighted and showed me everything it did. It's like, you got a plug in there from 1990 that's out of date. Yes, it is. So like it was actually like shocking to me to be able to bring code that I wrote back to life in hours after saying, and I've dropped in 2 papers. Like I got a contract from someone that like, we just made a few minor changes. I was like, did you? Drop the 2 in, it highlights it. Like, I think when you start showing people realistic, like this isn't just about writing a paper. This is about like real things that are gonna affect you, everyone. Like, so my question is where do you think our staff are on that spectrum of getting to the understanding that it, even if you don't like it, even if you can only think of certain areas, that it will bring change?
It's a great question. I think there's a recognition in a majority that it is here to stay. I think that, and it's obviously not capturing this huge percentage, but like with that learning series and having those conversations, hopefully we'll start to get a gauge from them about between them and their peers of exactly where they're at and how they see it, being beneficial and what we can do to kind of reach those others who may not be there. But I still think, like I said, we have some really cool and great usage, but I still think it's definitely in pockets. And I think we've tried to, with Danielle and sharing that out, it's like they know it's there. They know that it's certainly not going away. I think there's still some education that needs to be done. And I think that's what we're definitely pushing for and trying to move forward because, looking around where the other places are, maybe going fast and furious, and that can be a good thing sometimes, but it can also be a little scary. And so we want to try and find that right balance, but not shirk away from the responsibility of kind of getting them all up to speed on where that could be with them. So yeah, I think we got some work to do, but I think we're going to start tomorrow.
Go ahead, Ty.
I appreciate Mr. Richardson coming and speaking, and I get it, right? We don't want to replace the teacher with robots, and making sure, again, human centered, I think, is also in that guidelines, and so I appreciate him coming and making sure like we're doing this responsibly and ethically and equitably. But I love you saying, like it really frees up teachers to build relationships, to sit down and look, and that gets me excited. There are some efficiencies that no one's here to replace teachers. But again, I'm not a teacher, so I really respect Mr. Richardson coming in and sharing his thoughts.
The piece of that I would add is that I do believe that one of our goals for every graduate we have go across that stage is to be career and college ready. And I do believe that this is now a component to be career and college ready. You're going to have to be able to navigate and use. And, while that's, not necessarily, something that has been like, school's been about, maybe more the knowledge than other, but those things that we talked about are a profile of a graduate. Creative thinking, collaboration, those things using these tools for are going to be key. And at some point, I do think that we will visit this a part of like our Marzano teacher evaluation and those components, that at some point we will hopefully get comfortable in those elements that to ensure that our kids are career and college ready, that we evaluate how this is being used in classrooms. But we have a long way to go in providing the professional development expectations, those things before we get there.
And I think to your point about equitable, I think a lot about like, we need to teach all of our kids how to use these tools, right? In any situation. I mean, the nice thing about OpenAI is that every kid has access to the free version, which is pretty darn powerful. So like, do they all know how to use it? Do they all know how to use it appropriately, right? Like to get an answer, cool, right? But how could I use it to help me understand photosynthesis or help me, our special ed department does use it to help kids sort of raise the floor on some of our kids. Like, how do I get in the game? Because I'm someone who takes a long time to put pen to paper and actually generate ideas. And with, AI, we can make that first draft and then work on refining it, right? Like that. That's kind of, that's so, but so.
What's making your rocks roll up the hill?
Yeah.
And Evan, in the tech department, one thing we did see down at the conference is the idea of how do you build different software around this to give it to the structure that you need, right? So right now, for instance, we have Gemini, Node LM. Everyone has access to that. So a lot of people don't use any type of AI, so they might automatically go to ChatGPT without knowing that we have, those are two pretty powerful tools we can start with. And then what other tools can we actually support? Because there's thousands out there. So we get software requests on a regular basis once a group of people go to conferences that they want this, this, and this, but we can't support. So I think we're in front of it as far as that we can start to point people where if we want to go somewhere, we have these two in our cloud that has protected data. It's a good starting point.
Trying to be able to provide, the safe or the alternatives that we know kind of we can train them, effectively on, and to not just open it up to the latest and greatest that we're not quite sure where that data is going or what that company is all about. And we can go, you know what, I don't know about this, but I think you can almost accomplish the exact same thing using, say, a Gemini, which is, or Notebook LM. You know, taking a lot of information that you can upload and outputting it in ways the Notebook LM's kind of most fun features it takes. Like I have up there, you have 3 academic articles about generative AI in schools. You can interact with it in a chatbot format, so I can start to ask questions about just those specific pieces of information, right? So I'm controlling the data pool that it's coming from. And then everyone's favorite is I can sit here and generate a podcast where it's all AI generated voices, and they'll start to deep dive. And if you start to use it a lot, you'll see why that's funny, because everything's a deep dive that they do, and it'll produce a podcast that you can listen to in processing that. And they've just released, you see this interactive mode. So just to give a little listen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to look at AI and learning, specifically AI tutors, and how it might all shake things up. I've got to say, I'm really excited to dive into the research you've provided today.
Well, it's definitely a hot topic these days, and the research we're looking at goes beyond that simple question, can AI replace teachers? And digs deeper into how AI could actually help human tutors be even more effective.
So maybe AI can team up with teachers instead of taking their jobs.
So they release that, and then just releases this interactive mode where you can actually, and this will be me shouting across the room, so I'm not going to do it, but I can sit here, you can listen to that same podcast, and then I can hit the interact button and they'll treat me like a caller. I'll be like, what did you have to say? And I can ask a question and they'll respond to my question based on that data within there. So again, just other points of kind of access and leverage that we would never really be able to develop on our own. And now we have it, and I've done it in a matter of minutes, seconds, really. Pretty incredible.
You know, one thing that strikes me, I know as a representative of our Indigenous community, our learners actually learn better in real time. You know, we're kinesthetic learners, we're oral and audio learners. My hope is that this will help us get into more real time and maybe get off the internet for those learners who learn better that way, you know, so that they can have shorter times on the internet and maybe more time interpersonal, whether it's out in the garden or in the greenhouse or on the football field. I mean, whatever it is, you know, that they're doing. But that's what I'm hopeful for.
Because really, that's the third area. It's not just career or college. It's life, life skills, and contentment with who you are and your interaction with other people. Now, there is where the challenge is.
And even so, maybe in some ways you can look at it to advance those skills. Because if we have students, for example, that are interested in medicine, you know, they could be working on stuff in the AI world that kind of cuts their internet time down, but could be out doing more dissections or whatever it is.
Oh, that sounds
right?
gross.
I know, but you know what I mean, like biology-related activities, lab activities that still require that real-time process.
So Evan, I just had a follow-up question about the professional development that happened in August of last year, because I think you mentioned that briefly, and just knowing how things they're continuing to evolve very quickly in this space. But if you can think back to 6 months ago, what was the nature of the training of the professional development at that time for staff?
I think right there was, again, just kind of the introduction of the fact that how you can start to leverage the chatbot kind of element, because that's really where that focus was at that time. Like, you didn't have a lot of these offshoots and ways to kind of develop it and further evolve it like it has, or the Notebook LM, right? I just showed us kind of change the game and how we're processing. And so it was really focusing on, like, I think a lot of prompting, what that information can generate. I think we were still very aware of kind of what outputs might be correctly or incorrectly, and trying to just, again, share that you got to be very cautious, but, you know, take it with a grain of salt of what you're generating. And a lot of it too was in terms of how it's changing. You know, we've said it a couple of times, it's like, if your lesson or your question can be very easily answered by kind of a 1-sentence prompt in AI, is that really a great question, or should maybe we start to then rethink about what that is? I think that was kind of that primary start focus, because that was what you saw a lot. And like I said, and then that's where all was coming out. Like we have the AI catcher, right? It's gonna find if a student submits it with AI, and you're like, and people were like, well, should we be getting all of these? And I'm like, the hit rate's pretty awful. And then you're gonna end up accusing some poor kid who maybe has just happened to hit the nail on the head here and didn't do anything with it, or someone who knows how to do a really nice job or has messed with enough to prompt it. So more about kind of how are you using it, but then still keeping that human element with your students and kind of interacting with them and knowing when or when not something like that might not be their work, and how are you then changing what you're asking them to do that. So kind of a lot of early introduction to it. And there's just, like I said, it's changing daily.
Are y'all envisioning more professional development like this coming August, start of the new, just to keep up to date?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think this learning series is really going to jumpstart a lot of different opportunities and ways that we can hopefully interject that, not only for like an after school type thing, but as Jesse said, we had a couple principals really kind of tackle it head on and run some series with their staff during staff meetings, which was awesome to see, unprompted, not something we had to push, and then asking us for kind of just that support. And so we want to see more of that, more of those buildings kind of asking us for that support to do it, but leading the charge, right? And taking that initiative to do it. So that's really the hope, because that's where you're going to get the most of them. I mean, it's great to offer the incentive to come, like I said, in one of these learning series, but having it built into kind of what their daily PD, their staff meetings are, is really where it's going to be the most impactful.
Yeah, the series I'm looking at right now for the high schools, the two larger high schools they did like a 4-part series. What is AI? What are the efficiencies for us as educators? What's AI in student learning? And that's when they really thought about how are we teaching kids to use AI, all kids, so like there's both sides of that. I think for especially in secondary, it's like I think more in elementary, it's how do I as a teacher use it? How does it make my job more efficient? As an AA, how do I use it? How could it, make things more efficient as a principal? But the secondaries have really been thinking about how does AI impact student learning? Like
Middle
that
schools last year had Danielle come for staff
AI
meetings.
durability of assignments. It's actually kind of nice. And then AI literacy. So they did a 4-part series on that, having those conversations. But yeah, we're hoping that after this kind of 3-part, we'll know where to go next. And we were sort of like, when John talked to us about like, how are we exposing staff to it? How are we ensuring that we're making moves in the right directions? We can't just say we're gonna ban it and pretend like it'll go away. We all know that's not what's gonna happen. We kind of came up with this series first, and we've supported those building leaders who have wanted to go a little deeper already with all of their staff, and then we're sort of going, okay, after we do this 3-part, we'll figure out the next step. We do think it probably will impact as we think about PD for next year and all of our teaching staff.
And then I just want to also ask, I think, lastly, to what extent are there federal or state guidelines? And what about our associations, MEA, NEA, MASA? I mean, to what extent have they developed guidelines, and have those been incorporated into TCAPS?
The Office of Ed Tech did release a document that some of those guidelines that we've created is a lot pulled from there. That was a big one that came out, I believe, end of last year. And that Danielle was really on top of that and kind of pulling from that and sharing that out with us. That was the most kind of, like I said, widespread national one that I had seen. And then we've leveraged as many of the institutions that are doing it kind of across the state. Like I mentioned, Michigan Virtual has done a lot of work in that space and bringing in people from those districts who are kind of full steam ahead to try and help further develop that. So we're definitely kind of taking as much as we can and making it applicable as best we can. So
what was that one called? Organization?
Ed Tech and
the Office of Ed Tech.
The U.S. Department of Ed.
Yeah.
And then the second, Michigan Virtual, really, all of the statewide ed organizations and MDE got behind Michigan Virtual's guidance. They signed on to it. The reality is most of those groups, including our State Department of Ed, really don't have a lot of capacity, doing that. So really the resources, and there was even some state legislative funding that went to Michigan Virtual for a Office of AI that's been created at Michigan Virtual that is specifically working on that and to provide training. So they held the statewide conference that we sent our team to with that. And so Michigan Virtual is really taking that lead on this front for our state.
Office of AI, it just sounds Hogwarts, doesn't it?
I actually think it has a different, I'm close, but I'm not exact on it, of what it is. Now you're gonna make me look it up, actually, of what they've called it.
You really don't have to, but it's pretty interesting. It's so Jetsons.
But yeah, I think it's gonna, I mean, it's already having massive impacts on career choices and things. I mean, again, a reference, you know, it wasn't actually my kids in this case, but they were doing art and they're getting out of it because they said that everyone's getting out of it because why would you when you can just generate art, which is sad, but at the same time is they said that the number was just sheerly down in people signing up for art. So like bigger picture, we've got to think of like not just career choices and what we but like retraining people how to learn like how to make these selections too, because it's got large impacts.
It's the AI lab within the Michigan Virtual Learning Institute. It's a proper name.
Yeah, and then do I dare ask about at the policy level for us as a board? I mean, to my recollection, having reviewed all of our revised policies last summer, I don't think we have an AI.
And we don't, and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
You know, there are a few districts that have done that, but they're revising them constantly right now. So I think, you know, that guidance document, what we've tried to do, I do see a point where we get to something like that and something in our student handbooks. I do see some of that, but just honestly, we're not there yet, and most of our counterparts across the state are not there yet.
I just wonder, and MASB, and I mean, it'd just be worth
Again,
reaching out to them.
they're relying on Michigan Virtual, some of that, and they haven't given a specific guidance on that yet.
I was gonna say, it looks like we have a new policy for AI at exec committee for staff ethics.
Yeah.
To consider.
It's talked about in some, but you know, about some of that, but it references it, but like overall on exactly, you know, what the guidance doc does.
This is 4229, acceptable use of generative artificial intelligence. It says, I guess, optional new policy.
Yeah.
From term.
But it's a cookie cutter one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's.
I'm also interested in getting kids to work together with AI. The JK kids, I noticed some of these kids are so excited about going to the computers rather than doing things with other kids. You know, they really gravitate to putting on their headphones and going into that virtual space. And I think that one of the things that'd be very, very helpful is if we can get them to work more together. I'm afraid of people closing each other out.
See, I think it's coming back around. It's like when you send the kids to play Oregon Trail and everyone had to go and do it together. Mainly because you only had one computer.
That would be cool.
Going back to Oregon Trail, here we go.
You get together and you figure it out. Like it was a fun.
They're all working together, yeah.
That is cool.
Right. On the Commodore 64.
But to focus a little bit of deliberately to make it work.
Well, and this goes back to that, you know, the art of teaching, right? We actually still teach kids how to work together in groups. I mean, heck, as adults, sometimes we need to be reminded of how to work together appropriately with each other too, right? And so we do a lot of that, right? How do we make sure everyone has a voice at the table? How do we listen to the other side of it? Cool, that's all this perspective. What might we be missing? Or somebody who doesn't agree, what might they be saying or reading or thinking about or coming from, right? So,
Any other questions? All right. Anything, Joe? Any last?
So much more to go.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, but we'll periodically have things, especially in curriculum committee. You know, talking about what we have with it and visiting and what we get.
Well, I do appreciate it. I said, I think this is a definite start, and it's interesting to see, obviously, how we all feel. I was wondering if we have any kind of people who think it's not inevitable, but I think it is. So I'm glad we're all roughly on the same, at least, understanding that we're going to have to be very vigilant of its progress. So.
It only is until it isn't.
Was that?
I said it is until it
Yeah,
isn't, right?
exactly.
If we have a power grid that goes down, then it isn't,
Yeah.
That's a good point.
but.
Let's
Yep.
hear it for those generators.
So, yep, so then we'll finish up on that, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is this one, no, public comment. Is there any additional public comment? Okay. With that, that's it. Thanks. I know we've got a meeting heavy couple of months coming up, so the next Board of Education meeting is Monday, February 10th at 6 p.m. And with that, do I have a motion?
We did have a few questions, a little bit. Josie had asked some questions a little on
Study sessions.
our study sessions.
Yeah.
So I've been working at, and I should say we, collectively have been working on trying to get the schedule figured out with strategic planning. So again, Scott had let the board know that Dr. Nick Sigloric agreed to do some of the sessions within the component of facilitating them. What that does not include is any data collection, survey creation, survey sending out, does not include focus groups, all of that was done last time. And so I've been trying to talk to different people on that element. Nick himself thought it was going to be tough to hit our dates that we have here in time to be able to get the surveys, get them out, have enough time for them to get answered in that element. So I have found one data company that does that work out of Grand Rapids. I think that she feels like it's tight, but could have it possibly ready for the April dates, definitely not the March date. And so right now, we were able to get, as well as for the February 24th date, if the board wants, we were able to get the ISD's large room available for the February 24th, April 7th, and April 28th. So we do have those locked down right now. And so, and we have confirmed that Dr. Tim Quinn is available for the 24th. And Nick is available for those. Nick did say that he's willing to try and talk to some of his staff about possibly could do the facilitation of the focus groups. That's something that the data group I talked to said they would not have that capacity to do, and it's so many to not be local is really, really tough. So, that's where we're at right now. When I'm a little worried and I do have a message out to 2 other data collection groups, but I've had no response yet for a proposal to have. Right now we're within a couple $1,000s of what Nick told me he thought the cost would be, and then what this data group has put together. But the longer I go here waiting, the data person I have right now will no longer be able to meet our deadline of trying to have them done for the April dates. So I do need some guidance if we want to try and push back into May. Do we want to try and shoot for this? And where am I at with hiring the data? I don't need board approval to hire the data person. That's under the peer review as a service that I can sign a contract and do. But I would like some guidance on the board of where you want to go with all that.
So in terms of dates, the bottom line is that Monday, March 3rd, that was slated to be our first study session on strategic planning. That's a no-go, and we need to move that to late May.
I think so.
Late May that would be the earliest.
Well, right now we can just cancel that March 3rd.
And we might not need a third one. Last time we only used 2 in a little bit, and we may kind of gauge it. Do we need a third to schedule?
Yeah. I'll just note that May 26th, you probably know this already, that is Memorial Day, so we won't get people probably in attendance for that. But, and right now we have June 23rd scheduled to be a study session with a TBD topic.
I think we're holding it TBD partially because of, we don't even know if Nick's available on these particular dates as well. So we probably need to hammer the April 28th and April 7th down at least. And then my thought process is to get the data going, because otherwise it gets much more complicated on strategic planning. I think we would all like to have done but no one's responding anyway, so
And I could
it's-
try and get a second, but at this point, I have somebody that, is very reputable, within the Grand Rapids area that, I know is done, but again, I'm happy to try and work and get some more, but I think that probably pushes us now out of at least the first April date, at least.
No, that's
if
why
that's the
I would
case.
like to, I personally, I mean, this is obviously a group decision, so I personally would support the data that you can get, especially since they responded quickly and no one else is.
I guess the only caveat I'd like to have is for the board to reserve some judgment if we don't feel like we get the kind of response back and stuff like that we want, that we would consider extending it and not doing that first date, to just make sure, I think we would all agree the process only goes well if we get the kind of feedback. We had a really good response in data last time, I believe over 1,200 between staff, students, parents, and community. And I just want to make sure that we give it due diligence time and the board feels comfortable with that amount of data, we can keep you updated on that. But, I think we could go with this, but we may need to be flexible if we don't hit that number and we want to keep pushing to try and get more data.
And we'd want to facilitate
And the facilitated.
focus groups
Correct.
also by
Correct.
April 7th, the first.
Correct,
study
and
session.
it is tight.
And I guess the question that you can have a conversation with Nick is how late, because I know that he's on the clock as well.
Yeah.
So.
So I guess I'm just asking for a little bit of latitude and understanding from the board. Are you comfortable with that? Do you just want to push further now? Like, where do you want to go?
I think we should probably wait to push it further, but we should probably work with Nick on how late we can go.
What's the deadline, absolute latest deadline for getting your strategic?
We don't have a legal
plan?
requirement.
There is no requirement.
So
This one went into effect July.
January?
July of 2022, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've got
That's the
one,
goal.
part of our goal on the strategic plan was always not to renew it before it's
Yeah. You really
expired.
want to have it for, July 1 is the start technically of the new school year.
Yeah, so that's our goal, but there's no legal requirement to do anything.
Well, and even if, so say the last strategic planning special study session was in May or June, you've got to have a little bit of time to finalize the strategic plan to,
Yeah.
last time
And
North
set,
took.
and then
all
go
the
and set
thoughts
specific
and then
goals with it and those
had
kind
to
of
write
elements,
it. Ginger Smith had to work her magic
Yeah.
to produce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
But
defer to John, whatever you think is best. And so I'm clear, this present strategic plan expires July 1 as well?
It was a 3-year plan,
So we
and
have
this is the last year of the school year of the 3-year
5
plan.
months left on that, okay.
And the goal then was to redo it every 3 years.
No,
So,
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's
so just to be clear about that third, so we're
March.
scratching March 3rd.
I would
and then-
propose that we cancel March 3rd meeting.
Mhm.
I would agree.
Yeah.
We've got 3 in a row anyway, 3 weeks in a row.
And
So-
then that third strategic planning study session is TBD in May or June, June
Right.
23rd.
Do I, to cancel a meeting that's already posted? Do we need to have, we don't need to do anything. What's that?
We can cancel, we just have a
Yeah.
open meetings act process, but
You don't need any official one.
no.
We'll call Stacy to make sure.
So
I know,
that-
that's what I was like, oh, you hit-
You're not gonna have that luxury, thank
I know,
you.
that's-
Tammy, read it by the OMA.
That's why I was like excited. I was like, I'm always excited to have you, but I was like, sweet.
So ideally, the June 23rd study session though would be with Nick Siglaric and the
No, that'd be
ISD.
too late, I think.
If we need a third, yes.
Mhm.
If we need a third, otherwise, right now, what I would like to do is I will forward you on Galapagos, which is the company that does that data, so the board has that. And my hope would be, in the next 48 hours here to be able to work with her to get that started. And then with the goal of trying to hit, having our data collected and be able to have that first meeting with Nick, with that data, April 7th.
Mhm.
If Nick doesn't think that can be done or they don't, our first one would then be moved to April 28th.
Mhm.
We would then use the June 23rd, and then we could decide if we needed an additional one at that point. Again, you might remember Nick thought we were close to 2 or 3, the fact that most of the board has done it once, a lot of staff has done it once, maybe we can get away with having that, at worst case scenario, the June 23rd having it complete.
Can you guys remind me again why we aren't using the same people? that we used
Well,
last?
Nick Siglert
Nick
was
is
the
not-
same
Was Nick?
person.
Nick
Okay.
did it, he and his group that he worked with and partner did it all.
Okay.
And he is actually pretty well retired from doing this.
Yeah.
It was by a bag and a twist of an arm that Scott got him to agree to do the facilitation part
What was
in
in the
that
bag?
element.
What was in the bag?
No, we still nothing, everything legit.
Yeah.
Okay,
More of a good show.
sounds good.
So.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. So cancel the March 3rd meeting and yeah, you got the discretion just
I
to
do.
keep us updated.
Okay, we'll do.
So February 24th?
February 24th, we will. Right now, we're scheduled for that. Again, Dr. Tim Kuhn has said he is available. So he's asked that Scott and I have a conversation with him around the second week of February just to make sure he's on par with what he's planned. And
that's basically just preliminary, what do you think we need to cover in the next 3 years?
no, I think that's more of conversation of board governance, board's communication style collectively, those kind of things. You know, he, again, to give you the background, Dr. Tim Quinn's former superintendent of Green Bay, Wisconsin, former deputy state superintendent in Wisconsin. He was the president of Northern Michigan College. And he was also the head of the Broad Center for Urban Superintendency, one of the premier superintendent programs, preparation programs in the nation. He was a founding member hired by Eli Broad to run that, and author of 13, 14 books on superintendent board relations. And he lives here in Traverse City.
So any feedback from the board on things? Like, I mean, it's meant to be a collaborative, like, we're trying to get to like points of if you've got any frustrations, is it because of the fact that this is our role? Is it because of we should be doing something different? I think we're open to have difficult and any questions. So if you got any thoughts, just send them ahead of time and then we can make sure he includes them in a positive way.
But it's meant to be a very open dialogue for the board with him.
All right.
Okay, any other questions on the calendar? There was also a note that the board office hours is now some in person, some virtual. It doesn't delineate that in there.
They go up.
There was a snafu.
There was a
There was a snafu, yeah, it didn't actually happen. There was sort of a technical issue with the, we call it the Google Meet. So that couldn't be resolved in a reasonable way that evening.
See, I'm so
But nobody
glad it
showed up
wasn't
that we
me.
know of.
No emails or anything from
there
that
was- yeah.
standpoint either, so.
Yeah,
So.
so that was the
If
time
we
for it
get
to
anything, we'll
happen,
let you know, but.
Yeah.
But the next one is in person at Tano, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
And,
you the
you
person
were
this time?
in person. So,
Yep.
okay. All right, so just again, get back into, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Meeting adjourned. Actually, I don't have to, usually I don't have to say aye verbally.